What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. We are in the garage with the E92 M3 and we are going to continue this Clubsport track build. This video is going to be the first actual modification that will really play a big role on the track. As you guys know, repetitive laps on the track, things get hot. The whole advantage of keeping things as cool as possible is going to allow you to put in more laps on the track with your car. We are in the great state of North Carolina. The tracks that I go to are in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, and Virginia. All of these areas in the summer are very hot. So as you can imagine, these cars get super hot. Well, I am excited to announce that we have partnered up with the guys over at D9X Performance. The guys over at D9X Performance, big shout out to these guys. They specialize in intercoolers, silicone hoses, pipe kits, and radiators, and I think that they are just what we need on this build. We're gonna be getting into these two packages in the future, but for today we are just going to be focusing on the oil cooler. So I'm going to show you guys how to go ahead and replace the oil cooler. So when it comes to the actual advantages of this oil cooler over your OEM one, this oil cooler has a 69% bigger core volume, 59% bigger active cooling area, 19% lower oil temperature, 13.9% greater oil volume, and it is a drop-in fitment part. So when it comes to the installation, it's going to be pretty easy. See the part number right there, the DC100. I'm gonna have all of this stuff linked down below for you guys. Like I said, today we are just focusing on the oil cooler, but in the future we have a couple of more products that we're installing by them. But first thing first, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and jack the car up, get it onto jack stands, and then work on removing the front bumper and the skid plate below the car so we can access the oil cooler. If you do not have a skid plate, I highly recommend buying some sort of skid plate for your E9X M3. There are a few different options out there. I decided to go with the MLT aluminum undertray. This thing has probably saved me more times than I even know. But yeah, it's real easy to put on, real easy to take off, and it protects everything that's underneath the car. Definitely recommend buying one of these. All right, so we have the front of the car dismantled. Pretty easy. It's only like 20 minutes to get everything off. And right here in front, you're gonna see your oil cooler. You'll also probably recognize that this is not a factory oil cooler. I actually have the CSF oil cooler, but this oil cooler was actually on here when I bought the car, and it has quite a few miles on it. Definitely some wear and tear, but even with the CSF oil cooler, the D9X Performance oil cooler is going to be a major upgrade over the CSF one. I'll show you guys the cores side by side when I pull this one out, but in order to get this oil cooler out, we basically have two Torx bolts right here that we got to pull out. We've got one over on this side, and then if we go underneath the car, you're actually going to see a nut over here on this side. Then you have the actual oil line feeding into it over here, and then we go over to this side, you have the same nut with another oil line feeding into here. So oil is effectively passing through this core, through this cooler, getting cooled down and back into the engine. The idea is to take the air, cool the oil, put it back into the motor, keep those oil temps down. So keep in mind, when we take these oil lines off, there is going to be oil that spills out. It's not going to be a crazy amount, but you're definitely going to want to have something that catches some of the oil, or if you don't care, get some cat litter, clean it up, sand, whatever you want to use. But while this is still mounted to the car with these, I'm actually going to start with removing the oil lines. So I have something that I can pull against while this is stationary on the car, let these drain out, and then I will go ahead and remove the Torx and pop it out from here. We should just be able to slide the whole thing down. Nice little touch by D9X. They give you these little caps that you can cap off the oil on the hose once you release it. So we will definitely be taking advantage of that. This is a 13 millimeter. reduce some of the oil that you lose. All right, same thing on this side. All right, so now we have the 3 Torx bolts we have to get out there, T45s. All right, so now you should be able to finesse this thing out of here. There we go. All right, so now that we have the CSF cooler out, it is a noticeably smaller core size compared to the DO88. We have just a little over 2 inches on the CSF, DO88 coming in at 2.5 inches. So it is a larger core size, and that's what we want to see. We are going to have to transfer over these little pieces right here into here, and instead of using this stud that comes on the CSF one, DO88 actually supplies us with a bolt. So we end up just using a new bolt, new hardware. And then another thing that we want to pay attention to when we're using the new DO88 oil cooler is we have new oil rings. So once it is time to reinsert those new oil lines, we'll make sure that we use these new O-rings. Pretty cool to see the difference between the CSF one and the DO88 oil cooler. It's just nice to know that you are actually getting a performance benefit with the DO88 oil cooler over the other aftermarket options. CSF is obviously made in China. DO88 is actually made in Sweden. So reinstallation is pretty easy, obviously. We just basically reverse the steps that we used to pull out the oil cooler. And then at the end of this, we're actually going to go ahead and throw a little bit more oil into the car because we obviously did lose a little bit of oil. And this oil cooler does take a little bit more oil. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a tad bit more in there. Then we'll go ahead and measure the oil level in the car and see where we're at. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this beautiful oil cooler installed. All right, so now that we have the Torx bolts in holding up the oil cooler, we can go ahead and take the cap off of the actual oil lines. I'm gonna bring the oil tray over because there is gonna be more oil that spills out of here. And we need to take off the O-ring that is on here and replace it with the new O-rings from DO88. All right, so remember, like I said before, you no longer have a 13mm nut that is holding in the oil line to the oil cooler. You have a 13mm bolt that is holding in the oil line into the oil cooler. All right, we are all finished. Well, for the most part, we have to put everything back together. But man, that is an easy job. Anyone can do this at home, you guys. Shouldn't take you longer than, I don't know, about an hour or so to get this done. Good little DIY. Ooh, it looks good in there. The oil cooler is all cleaned up. Looks phenomenal underneath here. This thing is thick. thick. Got my oil out here, just taking a look. This is the second oil change since we did rod bearings, and it looks good. I don't see any metal flake or anything to be concerned about. Did lose a little bit of oil, and we have a larger oil cooler capacity now, so we're gonna go ahead and throw a little bit more oil in there. This is a full quart. I'm gonna throw like a quarter of this quart in there for now, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start the car, warm it up, and measure the oil level and see where we're at. If we need more, we'll go ahead and add more. If you are an S65 owner, you are very familiar with oil leaks coming out of the oil cap. This cap right here is made by a company called MLT. It's actually the same company that makes my Undertray. I highly suggest grabbing one of these MLT caps. They are tighter than any other cap on the market, and guarantee you will not get oil leaks out of your cap if you buy one of these. They have a bunch of different finishes for this. This is like the burnt finish, but I also have a black one on my N54 because they share these same oil caps. You'll also notice that inside of here, it's pretty corroded, pretty gross. We are going to be doing valve covers, and we are going to be doing Vanos caps as well. Just a few things that are on the menu for the future. The way that this cap actually works is it's a two-part system. So you can loosen the clamping portion of the cap, and you can go ahead and put the cap onto the car, and then you can tighten this. So these two clamps move inwards, and it just makes for a tighter seal around the valve cover. Genius. I love these guys. They come up with the best parts. But yeah, we'll go ahead and throw this on. We're good to go. Love it. All right, so we have everything back together. It is time for the first start. Just a quick note, you guys, any of the parts that you're interested in on this entire build will be listed down below. I actually build out sheets for all of my cars. So every single modification, every single maintenance item, wheel fitment, all that stuff will be linked in the description. Let's go ahead and get the E92 started up and see how our oil level is. All right. All right, so we gotta let the car warm up just long enough to where we can measure the oil, see where we are at. Oil is okay, and it looks like our temps are sitting just below 210, so it's definitely a little cooler. This car always sat directly at, if not a little bit hotter than 210. That is definitely that oil cooler doing its job. That may not seem like a whole lot, but I guarantee you on track, when you're repeatedly beating on the car and just putting it through the paces over and over and over again, that is a lot. Every little bit counts. All right, guys, so that is going to wrap up today's video with the D088 oil cooler. Absolutely love this thing. The fit, the finish, everything about it is perfect. Can't wait to really put this thing to the test on the track or even in the mountains. It's going to be an absolute blast to drive. We are not done with the D088 88 Performance modifications, we've got 2 more things left. I ended up going with their big pack, which actually also includes the radiator and the power steering cooler. And just like everything else on all of my builds, I'm gonna have all of this stuff linked down below for you guys. Huge shout out to DO88 Performance for partnering up on the E92 M3 build. In the next video, we are going to be tackling the radiator, and then we will go ahead and tackle the power steering cooler. But that is going to wrap this one up, you guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.